Pet him.
Oh my God, are we gonna do this every single time?
Yes. I'm rated
I'm drinking alone.
I've been drinking, girl. First of all, my cup is lower than yours.
Oh.
I'm a lush.
Okay, so Where the Crawdads Sing. Oh, wait, let me drink right
Charlie, it's not about you. Go over here.
Hi guys!
Welcome back to Plots with a Twist,
where we discuss books,
amongst other things.
And today, we're going to be getting into Where the Crawdads Sing.
Oh, that rhymes. Okay.
Oh my God, Charlie, stop. By, how you say her name? Delia?
Delia. I was saying Delilah, but it's not Delilah.
I think it's Delia Owens. Maybe we should do better in like looking up people's names before we start talking about them.
Y'all know, y'all seen this book all around town, I'm sure by now, because it's like the hottest thing smoking, or it was for a little while.
So yeah, we're going to just discuss some of the plots and a summary and some of our thoughts. So let's get into it. So just to give an overall summary of the plot, I'm gonna try to describe it as best as I can because it's just a story, really. They describe it as a coming of age story where this young girl lives in the marsh. You know, Ma and Pa made her, but the marsh raised her.
Right, very much.
Right.
Very much so.
She has older siblings. They live in a shack with just her and her pa. And in the opening of the story, her mom leaves pretty much abandons them, but she just always carries this hope that she'll return. So over the years, as she gets older, over the months really, each sibling kind of leaves, make their way out, and she's left with just her older brother and her pa.
And she's the youngest.
She's the youngest, yes. So at this time, she's like six, just turned 7. And basically, eventually, her brother leaves, the brother that she's closest to, and eventually, over the course of a year or a couple of years, her dad ends up leaving. So she
her dad leaves, she's only like 10 years old, I think, by that time, right?
I think so.
He leaves,
yeah. So at 10, her dad abandons her as well. So she's pretty much alone in the marsh, off the coast of North Carolina. And left to fend for herself. So,
and this also takes place in like the 1960s.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So starts around 1952 and progresses over the years. So it's a coming of age story of sorts where you kind of follow her and how she kind of navigates and survives in this. I keep wanting to call it swamp, but
it is a swamp. It's a marsh, but it's very swampy, swamp-like.
Right. So that's her story, and it's layered with another story that happens, I guess about 17 years later from the initial, from her being 6.
Yeah, from her.
So 1969, layered with the story of a murder.
Of a local guy, Chase Andrews.
Yes.
And so basically the story goes through like, it goes back and forth from like her, you know, how she's, you know, coming of age, but how she's going through life, and then it goes back and forth from that to the detectives figuring out what happened to Chase Andrews. So it goes from like 1950 to 1969, and then like 1953, and then 1960. So it just keeps going like each year, but you're going back and forth from like, not past to present, but it's like
given her story as well as this investigation that's going on with his murder
that's connected to her.
And eventually, as her years progress, you're going to get to the events of this murder and how it relates to her.
It's a good story, y'all.
So that's pretty much really it. Over the years, she kind of has certain people that she kind of comes in contact with that helps her navigate her life, kind of helps show her way. She doesn't go to school. She never has an education until she has a friend that she meets that used to be a friend of her brother's that comes and teaches her how to read. She has the local black guy from the gas, like, little shack that his family
take care of her.
They give her stuff over the years. So she learns to kind of make her way, basically. But overall, she's alone.
If you don't know nothing about marsh life, swamp life, this book is gonna tell you some things, like, because she really goes into detail about the animals in the marsh, and that has a lot to do with Kaya, the main character, the little girl, how she is able to kind of like survive because she just, I don't know, the marsh is her life. Like,
Yep.
It's so interesting. I don't know.
So overall thoughts of the story, yes, I thought it was interesting to tie in with nature. I know it was done intentionally to kind of give her a frame of reference as far as to how she navigates her human interaction, her human relationships, because she's pretty much isolated this whole time.
Yes.
So she doesn't really know how to just be in a crowd of people and be natural
and be out in the world.
Right.
Like.
Her interactions are very limited, and they already understand her situation, so they kind of approach her with ease. So in a way, she's kind of like a wild animal, if you want to say. They kept referring her to like a feral animal, things like that. So,
and because she lives by herself, she doesn't go into town. Everybody knows her like as the marsh girl, and they kind of like don't mess with her. Like every time she comes around, goes into town for anything, like everybody, they look down on her because she lives in the swamp by herself, which is kind of messed up because like she's a little girl, like she out there alone.
Yes,
but this is back in the day. People ain't care.
So initially, when I first started reading the book, I don't think I liked it.
Me neither. I didn't like it either. I text Tristan, was like, girl, I don't want to read this. It's about rural white people, whatever. No offense. But, like, I was like, oh, it's giving me that type of tease. Like, I don't, oh, God. But it got interesting. It got good.
So I think initially I was like, oh, this not for me. This not for us. But
especially when they started talking about Negroes. So I'm like, oh, here we go. Which you already knew that was coming because of the time that it was in.
So it kind of gave, you know what kind of vibes it kind of gave me? It kind of gave me like the Helpish, Forrest Gumpish type.
Very much Forrest Gump
vibes. So I was like, okay, yeah. So I didn't know if it was going to necessarily lean towards making me bothered.
Yeah.
Because when they tell a lot of stories like that, like, yes, it happened. It's part of history. And it's necessary to mention because, of course, it aids into what the times were like. And it aids into some of the discrimination she faced because a lot of it was similar to that of, Black people during that time. So she... in that kind of explains how she has solace in this older Black gentleman that's taking care of her. His family taking care of her because she's kind of a rejected person as well. Right. So I get that. It's just kind of like, at first it gave me those like vibes like.
But I have a problem a little bit with Black people in stories, even in movies, and they do it all the time. Like, we're always the ones to like help people out and coddle them, and it's just like, okay. Like the guy she was talking about earlier, like his wife is the one who like kind of helped Kaya through her little adolescence, getting her period and all that type of stuff. And she was described as like a basically a fat Black woman. It's just like, okay, that's the Mammy archetype, like right. It's always that, and I just was like, oh, okay, here we go. But I guess it's kind of it is true of that time, huh?
I said it is what it is.
Yeah,
I mean, sometimes,
but it's just like, okay, like here we go again with this storyline. But
so I enjoyed this overall story. I like how they layered this criminal investigation with her up and coming story, her coming of age story, so to speak, because it kind of made you curious as to what does this have to do with this. What is this leading into, especially when you're talking about just her being in the marsh, her learning, adapting, adjusting, her being comfortable with being lonely, her, working through her feelings when she does get interactions and those people leave. Like, it's an overall feeling of lost for her. So I kind of was curious as to what does this criminal investigation, have to do with it. Yeah. But then once you realize later in the story that the person who does die, Chase Andrews, does interact with her, then you're like, okay, so obviously, you knew that was coming, but it's kind of like, how? Because Chase is mentioned towards the beginning as kind of like he almost run her over with his bike when they're kids. So, and then she's always watched him and his friends over the years. So it kind of seemed like that kind of elusive group that she couldn't get to. So I was just wondering, I was curious how how they would even have a connection. And then once they actually had interactions and had a connection, I was like, okay. I see how it started to come together. So the one thing I did have a problem with, I mean, so some of the things, couple of things I had a problem with. And it's like nitpicky stuff. So it's not really that serious. But I get it to make the story what it is.
Yeah.
These things had to kind of be apparent. But like, for instance, I had a problem with the fact that it was 1969 in a small town, and these two sheriffs know the ins and outs of murder. Like, okay, so I listen to a murder podcast, and a lot of times when they talk about stories and talk about true crime from that time, especially in areas like this, they know nothing. So
because things like this don't happen, so they don't have any reference, like, in that town.
So a lot of times things get messed up because of that, which, I mean, not to ruin anything, but that kind of gets thrown into the play.
Spoiler alerts.
It's not a spoiler,
I know,
but
just,
that kind of gets thrown in later. But it's like, initially he's like, no prints, no this, and it's like, how do you even know to look for this stuff? And this is supposedly, well, I don't even know if it's their first murder, but assuming it's 1969, assuming it's a small town and everybody knows everybody, I would think they're not well versed on murder. Right. So I kind of had a problem with that, but I feel like that had to be the case for it to progress. Like, they couldn't just layer this story, or she couldn't just layer this story without giving them some knowledge to get to a point where the story does end up. So I get that part of it. The other thing I kind of had an issue with was how quickly, like, she learned.
I could see that, but I feel like it was like because they did it like through the years.
Well, not really.
What you mean, like when she
like
was
even when she learned to read, she learned to read in the summer. Which, not to say that can't happen, but like you still should
for
be
her
struggling
going from
to,
like nothing, like knowing nothing to like.
So I get that why the education aptitude had to be extremely high to show that she had the capacity to like really learn and teach others or whatever. But it just kind of, I mean, maybe I'm nitpicking, but it just kind of bothered me how quickly like she just picked up stuff, and it's just like,
when people say stuff like that though, I just be like, as well, like with movies, like, it's a book, it's a movie. Like, it's fiction, so.
I mean, I guess she was 14, so it's kind of like you could actually explain something.
Her,
But just having years of isolation, I was just like, okay.
Yeah, realistically, like,
it'd probably take her a little bit more time.
I would rate it a 4 just off the strength that when I first started reading it, I was like, absolutely not, I'm gonna hate this. No. And it's really good. It's written well. The character, it makes you genuinely interested in wanting to know like what happens. So just off of that,
I would agree. I give it like a strong 4.
Strong 4.
A strong 4. Like even almost. I wouldn't quite give it a 5. Like out of 5.
We have never given anything a 5. I don't think. Have you rated something a 5? That's another story. But go ahead.
I've rated stuff a 5, but not stuff that we've like talked about.
Yeah.
A lot of people have just, oh, you're gonna enjoy this, you're gonna enjoy that, and I really did.
Yeah.
So, and I was like shocked because I was like, I feel like I'm gonna enjoy it. Then I started reading, I'm like, I'm not gonna enjoy this.
Right.
I'm like, this is some
like, they was gassing this book up, and oh god, but yeah, it did.
I almost didn't want to enjoy it because of that reason. But anywho, so overall, great story. We would recommend it, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So, like, comment, subscribe,
all that stuff.
Ring the bell, and we'll be back and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.